everyone, welcome back to my channel. Can you believe that it is September already? This year is actually moving pretty fast. Well, now that we are in September, that means I'll talk to you about all the books I've read in August. It's an August wrap up in this video. The month of August has been really kind to me. I have read 11 books. Yes, 11 books. Although in July I had read around 16 books. This month I traveled a bit. I went to my hometown, had fun with my family, and that's why my reading pace was a little slow, but not very slow, because 11 books is also quite a lot, I guess. So I'll quickly tell you, out of these 11 books, I read 4 books on audio, 3 as ebooks, and 4 in your good old physical form. So without much ado, I'll quickly tell you about the books I've read, my thoughts about them, how I have rated them, and all that jazz. The first book that I read this month is Eat the Buddha, Life and Death in a Tibetan Town by Barbara Demick, and I love this book. This is a work of narrative non-fiction and investigative journalism. Barbara Demick has extensively traveled in China as well as in Tibet, and she has written this book. This talks about China's occupation of Tibet. This book goes way back in history and talks about, from the very beginning, what were the things that led to this conflict between these two regions. And the narration is so good because it follows the lives of people. There are some case studies and the narration goes forward along with those case studies. So you have a lot of context that is given. So if you're someone who does not know much about Tibet-China issue, then definitely this is the book to pick up, because you will get acquainted with everything. Concepts are broken down. I was someone who didn't know much about this, and after reading this book, I came out with lot of knowledge, and you can do further reading also to build up on what you have already read. So I definitely suggest that you give this book a try. I rated this book 5 stars. The next book is O. William by Elizabeth Strout. Now this book is shortlisted for Booker 2022. And I read this as a part of a long list that was announced way back in July. Now this book is everyone's favorite on Bookstagram, but I have an unpopular opinion. I beg to differ. I give this book 3 stars. I have my own reasons actually for this, but before that I would like to tell you that this book is actually a part of a series called the Lucy Barton series, and this is the 3rd book in the series. But don't worry, you can, if you're following the Booker short list and you don't have time to read all the 3 books, you can read this book as a standalone also. But I read the first book, My Name is Lucy Barton, in July, because it's a very short book, and I think if you read that book, you will get better context while you're reading this book. Although the author, to be fair to her, has a reference back to that book but has explained what has happened. Even if she's what I mean to say is, even if she is going back to her first book, she has given proper context, so you won't feel that you should read the first book in order to read this latest book. Now coming back to the story of this book, well, this is about, now Lucy Barton, our heroine or our protagonist of this book, is now in her 60s, and she is kind of talking or deliberating about her relationship with her ex-husband of 2 decades. They are divorced now, and there is a family crisis that kind of gets them together again. And while they are kind of solving or resolving this family crisis, she goes back and thinks about how her relationship with her husband evolved, why they parted ways, and how it is affecting her children. There are themes of loneliness, and it's a good meditation on life. But there were times when I felt the writing was not up to mark, in the sense that I felt a little bored while reading this book. I don't know, it might be just me, because I have heard nothing but rave reviews about this book. So I think you should give this book a try and judge for yourself how you like it. I rated this book 3 stars. The next book that I read is this classic, The Little Prince by Anton de Saint-Exupéry. And I love this book because it's a classic, and I love classics. This is actually considered as a children's classic, but it is full of metaphors, and I think it is best read by an adult to understand this book better. I think an adult would be able to do better justice to this book. And to be very honest, this was my first reading of this book, and I don't think I have understood it as well as I should have. So a reread is definitely in order, because it's full of metaphors and philosophical thoughts that I think that reading this book once is not enough. You have to read it another time to understand this book in a better way. Okay, so and yeah, of course I rated this book 4 stars if I have already not mentioned it. The next book that I read is another classic and in physical form, and that's Persuasion by Jane Austen. I rated this book 5 stars. I enjoyed it, but yes, not more than Pride and Prejudice. And I have spoken in detail about this book in one of my videos, and I'm going to link that video in the description box, please, so you can definitely check it out. The next book that I read was on audio, and that is Goodbye Things, the New Japanese Minimalism by Fumio Sasaki, and I love this book. I rated this book 4 stars, and this book is actually an introduction to minimalism. Minimalism is a way of life where you do not buy more things than what you require, and you give away things to make more space in your life. Now, in this book, the author talks about his own journey. He was a maximalist, and that definitely did not bring any joy to his life. So he tried to become a minimalist, and how that changed his life. Author gives us tips on how to become a minimalist in this book. Now, some of the tips are really good. Some you might find that they are too far-fetched for you to follow. So I think you should use your own discretion and take what you like from this book and leave what you don't like. But if you want to take up minimalism, then I think this is a good start. This book is narrated very well and it is quite interesting. Although it might be repetitive in some parts, and that is why I have given this book 4 stars and not 5. The next book that I have read is another classic, and that's Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I gave this book, guess what, 5 stars. It's amazing, and I think I don't know why I waited this long to read this book. I was always scared of this book. I mean, not in the literal sense, not because it's gothic or something, but I just thought that it will be very heavy in language and, you know, I won't be able to understand it, but I was wrong. The language is really very simple, very atmospheric, and there are plot twists in this book that will keep you hooked. So after a certain point, you'll be like, oh my god, what is happening next? And that is why I think you should give this book a try. Don't be afraid of the size, and it's actually not too long, so you can definitely give this book a read. The next book that I have read is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and I have spoken extensively about this book in one of my another videos, and I'm going to link that video in my description box and you can check it out. I gave this book, let me check, I gave this book 4 stars. Yes, I gave this book 4 stars. The next book I read was on audio, and that's Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I love Elizabeth Gilbert. Her book Eat, Pray, Love, which is her memoir, is my Bible. I swear by that book, and I was so scared to read any of her other books because I thought that Eat, Pray, Love is so good. It helped me when I was really down in my early 20s, when I was going through a rough period in my life. Eat, Pray, Love actually helped me to pick myself up, and that is why I was really scared to touch any of her other books. But finally, with a lot of courage, and I don't know, it just felt right at this point in my life to pick up Big Magic, and I don't regret it at all. I gave this book 4 stars. Big Magic is a book for anyone who has any creative pursuit or wants to take up any creative pursuit. It talks about creative living, how you can be creative. But I think even if you don't have any creative pursuit, but you want to follow something in your life, do something in your life, follow your passion, then you should read this book. It has some important life lessons that will help you in your life in general, like how not to be bothered about criticism, how you can just put things out in the world and then not be bothered about what people think about your work, because it's important to just do your work and put it out there and don't worry about the feedback and some stuff like that, how you have to be more disciplined at your work and how you can you know, achieve your creative pursuit. So it's a good book, definitely give it a read. The next book that I read is also on audio, and this is a very, very powerful book, and I think this is one of my best books this year, and that is Know Your Name by Chanel Miller. Now, if you don't know about this book, let me tell you that it is very powerful, but it comes with a lot of trigger warnings like sexual assault, depression, suicide. So make sure that you read the trigger warnings before you pick this book up. This book is about Chanel Miller, who was assaulted when she was in her early 20s in 2015. She had gone out with her sister and some of her friends to a college party, and there she got drunk and she was assaulted by a 19-year-old boy called Brock Turner. and when she lost her consciousness, she passed out because she was intoxicated, and he took advantage of her intoxication and assaulted her. So on the face of it, it looked like an open and closed case, but it was not that, because the accused, he pleaded non-guilty and the case went for a trial. And then what followed was a lot of accusations on Chanel's character, and you know how patriarchy rears its head in such situation. So Chanel, as is the practice, Chanel was not known by her name. She had been given an alias of Emily Doe, but in this book she tells her story as she comes out as Chanel and tells her story. She makes some very pertinent points about the justice system, about how victims of sexual assault are treated, and how her life was completely changed because of this assault, how her identity, her entire career was marred. And it is a very strong, very powerful read, and I think she makes really good points, and it is universal, not just limited to her region, but everywhere where sexual assaults take place. This book is a must read, but definitely keep the trigger warnings in mind. If you're not in a good mental space, I don't think you should pick this book up, because as I said, there are a lot of trigger warnings. The next book that I read is Burnt Out: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. I love this book. So this book is about burnout, and something that I have experienced recently when I got totally exhausted at my job, and I know what it is to feel emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted when you're totally burnt out. And this book actually talks about the entire stress cycle that women especially go through in their lives. Now during the pandemic, a lot of us overworked ourselves and experienced this feeling of burnout, and this book actually talks about how we can come out of this cycle, what are some of the things that we need to keep in mind, how patriarchy influences our burnout, and what are the things that we should do, like we should sleep adequately, we should not fall into the trap of perfect body, and you know, belittle ourselves or judge ourselves too harshly. So all of these points which we subconsciously may be aware of, but we are not following it. So this book will actually open your eyes to these important things. This book is tailor-made for women, so if you're a woman who is undergoing any kind of exhaustion or burnout, definitely pick this book up. I read this book on audio, and it was narrated by both the authors, and the experience was really good. I rated this book 4 stars. The last book that I read in the month of August is The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. Now Thich Nhat Hanh is one of the founders of mindfulness practice. So if you're someone who wants to get into mindfulness, that is conscious awareness, and want to include the practice of mindfulness into your day-to-day life, this book is a great start. It gives you tips to how to follow mindfulness, how you can spend a day by being mindfulness, what are the benefits of mindfulness. All of this is explained in part one of the book, and in the second part it also talks about mindfulness meditation. Now I rated this book 3 stars only because I found the second part was where he talks about detailed meditation. I found it a bit too repetitive as well as technical, and that is why I gave this book 3 stars. Otherwise, this book is great for you if you want to understand what is mindfulness and how you can bring the practice of mindfulness in your day-to-day life. So that's it. These are the books I read in the month of August, 11 in all, and I hope to read many more books in the month of September too. Let's see how it goes. So if you have liked my video, please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you back again in my next video.